Today we're working on a 2007 F-150. Going to be doing a front lower control arm replacement. The ball joint's bad, and so it's got 200,000 miles on it. Bushings are probably aged. If not, the owner wanted to do it anyway, so we're going to be replacing the whole control arm. This is probably the same for about 04 through 08. You want to diagnose it, you can hear the squeak. To get underneath there and stick a stethoscope on the ball joint socket and the structure there, you can hear the vibration in that squeak noise. So that's how I know that it's a ball joint on this side. First, we're going to remove the wheel. This one's got a little hubcap on it. .21 millimeters. Ball joint nut on the bottom is 24. Sway bar link looks a little rusty. Put some PV blaster on that. We just really need it to be able to come out of the control arm, so when we remove it, potentially I can just take the bottom off, if it will come off with an impact, but it may spin the whole shaft, which will end up, maybe we can hold it here. That's got a hex on the shaft. Don't really need to remove it from the sway bar itself, just need this joint to be loose. Gonna have to take the control arm bolts out and the strut bolt. I think I'm gonna take the strut bolt out first, because right now the strut is driving the control arm in the downward direction, and we're gonna wanna be pushing the control arm in the up direction to get this ball joint busted loose and out of there. So I'm gonna do the strut first, and then I'll try that drag link, and then we'll move on to control arm bolts, or I'll try to beat that out of there first. I'm not sure yet. So you've got 1 1/16 on the head side and 1 3/16 on the nut side. Because of the load that's on the bolt, may be able to take the nut off with an impact and not have to hold the head side. We'll see. Nope, we're gonna have to hold the head. There's really not that much load on the bolt. Probably not going to take a whole lot to get it out. So that means there wasn't much pressure being applied down on the control arm, but trying to compress it any further to get that ball joint out would have been difficult. The control arm bolts are in oversized or slotted shaped holes, and there are no keys or locating eccentrics, they call them. So what we're going to do is use a paint marker and mark the edge of the head of this nut and bolt on both sides of both bolts, so that we can get them back in the same place. He's going to get in alignment anyways, but this is just to get real close. Might sling this wrench right off of there, but it's a 21 on the head side, and I'm using 1 1/16 on the nut side. So I'll be using both hands and setting the phone down. In the back it's double wrenches, because I do not want to remove the sway bar bracket, so that's all the way you can get to it. All right. Popping those down and smacking up on the ball joint. We got that separated, and now it's going to run into the CV axle on the bottom side, so you're going to have to start pulling it away from towards the inboard of the truck. We won't be able to do that until we get the last connection loose, so I'm going to work on the sway bar link next. I won't get this part on camera, but I'm going to hold it here with a 15, and then it's a 17, no, it's an 18 on the bottom with an impact. I'm just going to try and take loose this bottom connection. I ended up holding the base, which is made of steel. It's not on the actual boot. Hold the base with a pair of vice grips. And then I was able to take the nut off of the bottom. I'll try to get mid-step here where both of the control arm bushings are out, sway bar link is out, strut is out. This is still in partially, but you can see the angle that it's got to work at in order to get out of here. So I probably won't get another camera angle, but I'm going to have to bend the ball joint this way so that I can try and snake that out of there. Well, looks like there's no way around it. You have to pull the axle backwards out of the knuckle in order to get access to that. So we're probably going to have to take the tie rod loose because that is holding the knuckle here and we need to push out. So we've got it loose at the lower control arm. We ought to be able to push the knuckle outward, but we're not going to be able to push it outward unless the tie rod is loose. So I'm going to leave the upper control arm in place, even though I saw a procedure that shows taking the brake caliper off, taking the rotor off, taking the upper control arm loose, and basically removing the entire knuckle, unhooking vacuum lines. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to pop off this seal, the cap, and take off, there should be a 13mm nut in there. And then hopefully when I remove the tie rod, I can swing this out from the bottom out, pull the axle out of the way, and then get this out. It's pretty easy to deform, but I just tapped here with a hammer to get behind that lip, and then you can turn your screwdriver sideways, kind of push it out. You may need pliers, or you might be able to just pull it off. That has a, looks like a hex head center. No, that's just round. So hopefully I can just pull that 13mm off with no issues. Can use a pry bar in here to hold this hub still while you take that nut loose. Tie rod should be a 21. Thread that back on just a little bit and then smack this with a hammer so that'll fall out. All right, now we should be able to swing this out, and I'll have to tap on the end of the axle while I'm swinging this out to try and get that to pop out. Once we get the axle removed, then this should fall right out, basically. I mean, we'll have to lift up, and creating the clearance to get it out. So yeah, I just swung the knuckle out, kind of using the control arm to pull it, and pulled the axle out of there. And that should create the clearance to get the ball joint loose. Compare the parts, everything looks good to go. So we're gonna reinstall in the reverse order. So we'll set that ball joint in the hole first and then stick the axle back in. So ball joint first, peel this out while the control arm is not hooked up to anything else up here. So slide that knuckle out, insert the axle again, go ahead and throw the nut on the axle, and then we'll start lining up control arm bushings in the frame. Make sure the strut's gonna line up and the tie rod end goes back in the knuckle and the sway bar link gets reattached. I'm gonna go ahead and thread the nut on and apply some pressure to this, pull it down into place. That way I know that there's clearance above it, that the ball joint's not sitting too high. So I'll go ahead and put some pressure on it, tighten this nut down by hand, and then I know I've got enough room to get the axle in. Okay, axle reseated. Put your 13 back on the end. Same thing, pry bar, stabilizing the rotor or the hub while you tighten that down. Probably leave the tie rod loose for now so I have a little bit more play to make sure we get the rest of these things in the right orientation. I don't know if I can do it with one hand or not. Trying to get that sway bar hole lined up, but can't really do this one-handed. It's pretty easy when I got in the right orientation. So I went underneath the truck and got at it from this angle, put one hand on the right side, one hand on the left side, and then I could steer it and I could see the strut arm and the hole for the sway bar link all at the same time. I slid this bolt back in first, and you can see that the other one is still a little low. So to bring that up, I went ahead, started the nut on the bottom of this sway bar link, and I'm going to begin tightening it. And that pretty much brought the other one right where it needs to be. Sorry about the camera angle. I was watching the bolt. You don't want to tighten these down until you've got some weight on the vehicle so that they're in the right orientation. So next up, I'm going to work on getting this strut in the right location. Probably have to use a pry bar to hold it into place while I slip the bolt in this one. And then lastly, we'll put on the tie rod end, tighten up the ball joint nut, and then we will lower the vehicle down onto the tire and tighten up the control arm bushing bolts. Get it kind of close and you can slide a pry bar or spud wrench, whatever you want to call it, in there and get it where the hole's a little better lined up. Fit your bolt in. I've already tightened down the nut on the axle, so you just want to put your cap back in there. Tap that in with a small hammer just until it looks like it's seated. So reconnect your tie rod, and now everything is back together. It's just not tightened. So we need to tighten strut mount, tie rod end, lower ball joint nut, put the tire back on, put weight on wheels, and then tighten down our control arm bushings. And we got to make sure that we're in the right location on those. So we'll go snug first, just to get in the right spot, and then weight on wheels to make sure the bushings are in the right kind of orientation, and then we'll tighten them down. I went ahead and used a jack to take the load as simulated, like it's on the tire, so I can go ahead and torque these down. That's the process for lower control arm replacement on a 2004 to 8 Ford F-150. This was a four-wheel drive model. That's why the CV axle was in the way. But two-wheel drive would be a little bit easier. If you like today's video, please subscribe to the channel.